Are you ready to learn the chilling truth about the most terrifying, decisive day in the life of a real Lakota warrior? If you think you know everything about bravery thanks to Hollywood movies, today your preconceptions will be shattered. What was actually hidden from view and took place in the Native American camp just one day before the deadly clash will forever change your understanding of true courage. Before we dive into this incredible atmosphere, be sure to hit that big like button and subscribe to the channel. It's the best motivation for us to do even more awesome historical investigations. Be sure to watch this video all the way to the end. In the finale, we'll reveal the secret of ancient rituals, and you'll learn the most fascinating part: how an ordinary flesh and blood person transformed their natural, primal fear of non-existence into an unshakable, almost supernatural inner strength. Get comfortable, brew some tea. We're about to dive into history. What if I told you that everything you believed in is a lie? For the Native Americans of the Great Plains, true preparation for battle did not begin with sharpening weapons at all. A Lakota warrior's morning began in complete silence, when the first rays of the sun barely touched the tops of the tipis. The man would step out of his dwelling to greet the new day without a single sound. He would head to the river to perform a ritual ablution with icy water. The icy water stung his skin, causing his blood to rush through his veins. The warrior slowly rubbed his body with bundles of dry grass, washing away the dust of days past. Every gesture was measured and intensely focused on the present moment. The man did not think about the trials ahead. He was completely immersed in the sensations of his body. The cold stream washed away his doubts, leaving only crystal clear clarity of mind. After the ablution came the time for fumigation with sacred herbs. The man took dried white sage stalks from a leather pouch. He lit them from the smoldering coals of a small fire, allowing thick smoke to envelop his figure. The smoke rose slowly, carrying away human weaknesses and inner fears. The warrior inhaled the bitter aroma deeply, filling his lungs with the energy of the boundless plains. This ritual required complete solitude and maximum concentration on his thoughts. The warrior sat down on the ground, crossed his legs, and closed his eyes. He mentally connected with the forces of nature, asking them for fortitude. The wind ruffled his hair, as if confirming the invisible presence of higher powers. In those moments, a man ceased to be merely mortal, becoming part of the great cycle of life. The clothing for this day was chosen with particular care and deep respect for tradition. The man wore simple leather leggings and soft moccasins adorned with beads. Every detail of the ornamentation had its own meaning and told the story of his lineage. The leather was soft, like a second skin, not restricting movement and allowing the body to breathe. The absence of unnecessary details helped maintain lightness and readiness for any surprises. Returning to his dwelling, the warrior moved silently, like a shadow. He avoided unnecessary contact with other members of the tribe, preserving his inner peace. The glances of his fellow tribesmen were full of understanding and hidden respect for his state of mind. No one disturbed his solitude with idle chatter or mundane requests. The camp went about its usual business, but an invisible sphere of calm formed around the warrior. Inside the tipi, twilight reigned, broken only by the light streaming in through the opening at the top. The man sat down in his usual spot by the hearth, continuing his inner work. He sifted through the important moments of his life in his memory, feeling neither regret nor pride. It was a process of accepting his past and complete humility before the future. His mind was cleansed of attachments, leaving only a cold determination to fulfill his duty. The food at this hour of the morning was as simple and light as possible. The warrior ate only a small piece of dried meat and washed it down with clean water. Overeating was considered unacceptable as it weighed down the body and clouded the mind. The stomach had to remain half empty so that energy could be directed toward concentration. This asceticism was yet another step on the path to perfect spiritual balance. Time dragged on slowly, like thick resin, but the man did not rush it. He watched the play of light on the walls of the tipi, noting the slightest changes. There was no haste in his movements, only the smooth, measured rhythm of an experienced man. Every second was lived with the utmost awareness and complete presence in the moment. He knew that this day might be his last, and he cherished every moment of it. Preparing the spirit always came before preparing the body and weapons. It was during these morning hours that the foundation for future resilience was laid. Without inner calm, any physical skills lost their true power. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with this approach to training? Share your thoughts in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos. Are you ready to learn the truth about how the Great Plains warrior's ideal arsenal was created? After completing his spiritual practices, it was time for a thorough inspection of his equipment. The man laid out his tools before him, treating them with the utmost respect. Each item was an extension of his own hands and required to be in perfect condition. Wood, stone, and leather blended together to form reliable means of protection. The warrior's faithful bow, made of flexible ash wood, remained his chief companion. The man carefully examined the shaft for the slightest cracks or damage. He ran his fingers smoothly over the smooth wood, testing its elasticity. The bowstring, made of twisted tendons, required special attention and the correct tension. If necessary, he lubricated it with fat to prevent it from drying out and snapping. The quiver of arrows was the next important piece of equipment. The warrior took out each arrow, carefully checking the straightness of the shaft. The flint or iron arrowheads had to be razor sharp. The man took a small whetstone and slowly sharpened the edges of the arrowheads. The sound of the grinding stone echoed monotonously through the tipi, creating a rhythmic background. The arrow fletching played a crucial role in flight accuracy. The warrior carefully smoothed out the crumpled feathers, replacing damaged ones as needed. The thread securing the fletching to the shaft had to lie tight and even. The slightest flaw in this construction could lead to a miss at a critical moment. Therefore, the work was performed with precision and immense patience. The knife, an indispensable tool in daily life and on the battlefield, also required care. The man drew it from its leather sheath, adorned with a geometric pattern. The blade was polished to a mirror-like shine so as not to let its owner down. The horn, or bone handle, fit comfortably in the palm, ensuring a secure grip. After sharpening, the knife was carefully returned to its place on the belt. The shield, made of thick rawhide, was the warrior's primary defense. He took it out of a special cover that protected it from moisture and the sun. The leather was so thick that it could stop an arrowhead. The man checked the strength of the straps that secured the shield to his arm. Any loosening of the fastenings was immediately fixed with new leather strips. As he worked, the warrior often hummed monotonous tunes to himself. These sounds helped him maintain his rhythm and stay focused on the repetitive task. The workshop was filled with the scent of tanned leather, wood shavings, and whetstone. These were the scents of calm confidence and readiness for any challenge. The tools in his hands moved with the relentless precision of a machine. Not a single detail was overlooked on this important day. Even the laces on his moccasins were checked for strength and replaced if necessary. Spare bowstrings were neatly rolled up and tucked into small belt pouches. The warrior knew that in a critical situation, he would have no time to repair his equipment. Everything had to work flawlessly, without a single hitch. When the inspection was complete, the weapons were neatly arranged in a place of honor in the tipi. They were ready at any moment to serve their master faithfully. The man looked at his arsenal with a sense of deep satisfaction and calm. He had done everything humanly possible. The rest was in the hands of fate. Now his mind could shift to other important aspects of preparation. High-quality equipment had always been the key to confidence in one's own abilities. Attention to the smallest details distinguished an experienced person from a young novice. Every piece of equipment carried within it a fragment of the labor invested in it. How many hours do you think it took to conduct such a thorough inspection of his entire arsenal? In the next chapter, you'll learn what other unusual rituals accompanied this day. The secret, passed down from generation to generation, lies in the meaning of the body patterns. After noon, it was time to apply special paints to the face and body. This process had a profound symbolic meaning, far beyond simple decoration. The paints were made from natural minerals, clay, and ground plants. Each color carried a specific message to the forces of nature and the surrounding world. The color red symbolized life energy, strength, and readiness for action. The man carefully mixed the dry pigment in a small stone bowl. He applied red lines to his cheekbones, emphasizing the harsh features of his face. These lines made his gaze more expressive and piercing. Red paint was also applied to his shoulders, signifying physical power. Black was a symbol of victory over adversity and unyielding determination. It was made from charcoal, mixed with a small amount of vegetable oil. Black stripes crossed the warrior's forehead and chin, creating a strict geometric pattern. This color signified that a person was ready to go all the way. Applying the black paint required particular precision and a steady hand. The color yellow was associated with sunlight and inner enlightenment. The man used yellow ochre to create delicate patterns around his eyes. These patterns symbolized the ability to see the essence of things and hidden intentions. The color yellow helped maintain clarity of mind during the most stressful moments. The process of applying the paint became a form of deep meditation. White signified purity of thought and readiness to transition to another world. The warrior applied white dots to his chest, in the area of the heart. These marks served as a kind of compass for the spirits, showing them the way. It was as if the man were declaring his readiness to accept any fate with dignity. The white clay lay in an even layer, contrasting with the dark skin. The designs were never random. They reflected a person's personal journey. Geometric shapes spoke of trials overcome and experience gained. Circles symbolized the infinity of life and the cyclical nature of time on Earth. Straight lines denoted the warrior's direct and honest path through life. A mirror was not used. The hands themselves remembered every curve of the familiar pattern. The shield was also covered with new layers of paint on this important day. Symbols of the natural elements, such as lightning and the sun, were depicted on its surface. These images were meant to give the leather base additional strength. The process of painting the shield required the utmost concentration and precision. Every stroke was applied with a deep belief in its invisible protective power. The silence in the tipi was broken only by the soft rustling of the plant fiber brush. The warrior worked slowly, allowing each layer of paint to dry completely. A faint scent of mineral dust and dry earth hung in the air. It was a time of complete unity with his thoughts and inner world. The outside world receded into the background, ceasing to matter. When the painting was finished, the man sat motionless for a long time. He allowed the paints to become part of his body, to merge with his very essence. The warrior's face was transformed, becoming a frozen mask of unshakable resolve. Now he was fully prepared to face whatever challenges the coming day might bring. His outward appearance perfectly reflected his inner state. Applying these patterns was a true art form, requiring both knowledge and faith. These ancient symbols connected a person to the boundless cosmos and the forces of nature. It's amazing how much meaning can be conveyed through simple lines and colors. If you enjoy learning about such profound cultural details, please like this video. Your support helps us create more interesting and unique content. Guess what happened next on this long day of preparation? After noon, the warrior would leave the tipi and head out into the open space of the camp. He would find a secluded hilltop on the edge of the settlement, far from the hustle and bustle. The man sat down on the sun-warmed earth and gazed into the distance. A long and silent dialogue with the surrounding space and the wind began. The wind on the Great Plains had always been more than just a weather phenomenon. It was perceived as the living breath of the earth itself, carrying important information. The warrior closed his eyes and let the currents of air wash over his face. He tried to detect the slightest changes in the direction and strength of the gusts. The temperature of the wind could tell him a great deal about what tomorrow would bring. A dry, hot wind promised clear weather and good visibility. Cool breezes hinted at the possibility of nighttime fog or morning dew. The man analyzed this data with the precision of an experienced observer of nature. The effectiveness of his bows and other equipment depended on the weather conditions. Nature was his chief ally, one he had to know how to understand. The warrior's gaze slowly swept across the horizon, studying the terrain. He noted deep ravines, small hills, and the beds of dried-up streams. Every contour of the landscape could serve as cover or an insurmountable obstacle. His memory recorded these details, creating a detailed mental map of the territory. The ability to navigate the terrain was a vital skill for every man. The silence of the plains was deceptive. It consisted of a multitude of faint sounds. The rustling of dry grass and the creaking of trees in the distance merged into a single symphony. The warrior listened to these sounds, clearing his mind of internal dialogue. He became part of this vast world, dissolving into its expanses. The man's ego receded, giving way to the primal instinct to merge with nature. During these hours, the man completely abstained from food. Fasting sharpened all his senses, making his perception clearer and more acute. The body felt light, as if ready to lift off the ground at any moment. The absence of heaviness in the stomach allowed energy to circulate freely throughout the body. It was a time of strict asceticism and total control over one's needs. The sun slowly sank toward the west, painting the sky in golden hues. Long shadows crept across the ground, altering the outlines of familiar objects. The warrior stood motionless, continuing his silent observation of the world around him. His figure on the hill looked like a stone statue, untouched by time. Only occasionally did he take a deep breath of the fresh evening air. This time of solitude helped him bid a final farewell to worldly worries. The man understood that tomorrow might take him from this world forever. He accepted this thought with remarkable calm and absolute humility. Fear dissolved in the grandeur of the boundless sky and the endless prairies. All that remained was a cold determination to fulfill his destiny to the very end. As twilight began to deepen, the warrior slowly rose to his feet. He cast one last glance at the horizon, mentally bidding farewell to the sun. Tomorrow's dawn would bring entirely new trials and new challenges. The man turned smoothly and made his way silently back to camp. His steps were light, leaving almost no footprints on the dry earth. The ability to listen to nature has always distinguished the true masters of these lands. It was the wind and the earth that gave them the strength to overcome any hardship. Do you think modern people are capable of sensing nature with the same subtlety? In the next chapter, you will learn how evening life was organized before important events. The return to camp took place just as the first fires began to be lit. Twilight gently descended upon the tipi, softening sharp edges and harsh shadows. The camp filled with a thick scent of wood smoke and food being prepared. People moved slowly, trying not to disturb the solemn silence of the evening. Every member of the tribe understood the significance of the coming day and behaved accordingly. The warrior approached his dwelling and began gathering dry branches for the hearth. Building a fire was a special process that brooked no haste or fuss. He carefully arranged the thin twigs into a small cone. A spark was struck with a flint, and a thin wisp of smoke shot upward. The man gently fanned the flame until it engulfed all the twigs. The fire in the center of the tipi provided soft light and much-needed warmth. The flames danced, casting whimsical shadows on the painted walls of the dwelling. The man sat down by the hearth, holding out his hands, which had grown cold during his meditation. The warmth slowly seeped beneath his skin, relaxing his tense muscles. This small fire became the center of his little universe for the evening. The warrior's wife silently went about her household chores, keeping things in order. There was no need for long conversations or passionate displays of emotion between the couple. Everything that mattered had been said many years ago, on the day of their first meeting. The woman moved smoothly, trying not to disturb her husband's inner concentration. Her presence gave a sense of a reliable support system and the comfort of home. She served him a simple evening meal in a wooden bowl. It was a light soup made from dried roots and wild herbs. The man ate slowly, chewing each bite thoroughly and savoring the flavor. The food was meant to provide the necessary energy without overburdening the body. Tribal traditions forbade any excesses that evening. After dinner, the bowl was carefully set aside. The man took a small piece of chamois leather and began to wipe his hands. He washed away the food residue, maintaining perfect physical cleanliness. Attention to hygiene was an important part of preparing for any significant events. Dirt on the body was considered a sign of carelessness and disrespect for oneself. The fire in the hearth gradually burned out, leaving behind only smouldering embers. The red glow created an intimate and peaceful atmosphere inside the tipi. The sounds from outside the camp reached here muffled, as if through a thick barrier. The world had shrunk to the size of this dwelling, filled with warmth and silence. Time seemed to have stopped its course, frozen in a moment of anticipation. The man took out his pipe, made of red stone and wood. Filling the pipe with dry grasses was another important evening ritual. He lit the mixture from a smouldering ember taken from the hearth. Thick smoke slowly rose toward the opening at the top of the tipi. Smoking was not a habit, but a way of communicating with higher powers. The last remnants of the tension from this long day dissolved in the clouds of smoke. The warrior sat with his eyes closed, immersed in a state of deep peace. His breathing was even and measured, like the ticking of an invisible clock. His heart beat calmly, without a single sign of fear or anxiety. He was in complete control of his emotions, not allowing them to get the better of him. The evening in the tipi was a time for taking stock and finding inner harmony. Simple daily activities helped him ground himself and maintain clarity of mind. The man found solace in his familiar routine as he prepared for the unknown. Tomorrow would demand the utmost of his physical and mental strength, but today he was entitled to this quiet hour of absolute peace. The truth that will shock you lies in how these people said goodbye. In the culture of the Great Plains, it was not customary to stage tearful scenes or deliver grand speeches. The man and woman sat facing each other in the dim light of the embers. Their eyes met, conveying a vast spectrum of unspoken emotions. There was more meaning in this silent dialogue than in 1,000 spoken words. The woman knew full well that this evening might be their last meeting. She refused to show any sign of weakness or fear. Her face remained calm, radiating dignity and pride in her man. She carefully folded his clothes, checking every detail of his attire. Her hands moved with confidence as she carried out her part of the shared task. The warrior looked at her with deep gratitude and tenderness. He valued her strength of spirit no less than the courage of his comrades in arms. In her silence, he found support and justification for all his actions. He knew that if he were to leave, she would be able to take care of herself. This certainty lifted the last heavy burden from his soul. They exchanged barely perceptible gestures, understandable only to the two of them. A light touch of the hand replaced the most solemn vows of eternal fidelity. In that touch lay the entire story of their life together. It was warm, confident, and devoid of any tragedy. Life is harsh, and they accepted its rules with complete humility. Outside the camp, too, an atmosphere of restrained, silent farewell reigned. No one sang loud songs or held noisy gatherings around the campfires. People conserved their energy, understanding the value of every hour before dawn. The silence was a sign of mutual respect and an understanding of the gravity of the moment. Only the wind gently rippled the leather walls of the many dwellings. The man mentally bid farewell to every corner of his native camp. He recalled the warmth of the summer sun and the cold of winter blizzards on these plains. His heart was filled with love for this harsh but beautiful land. He had no regrets about the path he had chosen, considering it an honor to defend his people. Dying in battle was always considered the most honorable end for a man. The woman handed him a small leather pouch filled with healing herbs. It was her personal talisman, created to offer protection in times of trouble. The man gratefully accepted this gift, tucking it away against his chest. This gesture embodied all the power of a woman's care and deep devotion. This amulet was to be the last thread connecting him to home. They continued to sit in silence, listening to the crackling of the cooling embers. Time lost its meaning, dissolving into this endless moment of farewell. Every second was etched into their memory with incredible clarity. They made no attempt to hold on to the moment, allowing it to flow as it would. Accepting the inevitable gave them both a surprising sense of inner freedom. When night finally took hold, the woman was the first to rise. She silently spread out a bed of soft, tanned hides. The man followed her example, preparing for the night's rest. There was no sense of doom in their movements, only a calm readiness for the coming day. They shared this evening just as they had shared their entire lives. Silence is often more eloquent than even the loudest declarations of love. These people knew how to connect with each other on a completely different, deeper level. Do you think you could show the same composure in a similar situation? In the next chapter, you'll learn about the other small preparations that rounded out this evening. Before going to bed, the warrior gave his clothes a final inspection. He picked up his spare moccasins, carefully checking the soles. The thin leather had to be intact without the slightest scuff. If necessary, he would quickly apply a patch using a bone needle and tendons. A sure footing on solid ground depended on the quality of these simple shoes. Working with a needle required good eyesight and a steady hand. The man made even, neat stitches, pulling the edges of the thick leather together. In the dim light of the tipi, it was no easy task, but experience took its toll. He was used to relying only on himself when it came to repairing his gear. The finished work brought satisfaction and a sense of complete readiness. Then he checked the fastenings on his leggings, tying strong knots. His clothing must not catch on bushes or restrict his movements in battle. Any excess fringe was neatly trimmed with a sharp knife. The warrior strove for maximum streamlining and lightness in his silhouette. He had to become as swift as the wind over the prairie. The man braided his long black hair into 2 tight braids. This process also served a practical purpose, keeping the hair from falling into his face. Narrow strips of leather were woven into the braids, providing additional strength. Sometimes a single feather was woven into the hair, symbolizing past achievements. The warrior's hairstyle was austere and simple, just like his entire life. A small water flask made from a dried gourd was hung on his belt. Water was the most valuable resource, capable of sustaining strength at a critical moment. The flask was tightly sealed with a wooden stopper so that not a single drop would spill. The man checked the reliability of the strap to which it was attached. Now his belt was fully equipped with all the essentials. A small belt pouch held a flint and dry tinder. Fire could be needed at any moment, whether for warmth or to send a signal. The warrior was always prepared to survive alone in the wilderness. His self-sufficiency was the key to successfully completing any task. Every item had a strictly designated place so he could reach it without looking. Having finished with his clothes, he glanced once more at the weapons laid out before him. The bow, arrows, knife, and shield lay in perfect order. They seemed like living creatures, waiting for their moment. The man mentally greeted each item, promising not to let them down tomorrow. It was a silent oath of loyalty to his tools and his craft. It was getting chilly in the tent, as the fire had almost completely died down. The woman was already asleep. Her breathing was quiet and steady. The warrior threw a warm cloak over his shoulders to protect himself from the night's dampness. He sat down at the entrance to the dwelling, pulling the leather flaps slightly aside. The night air rushed in, carrying with it the sense of the sleeping earth. The man's gaze swept over the silhouettes of the neighboring dwellings. The camps slept, gathering strength before the coming upheavals. Only occasionally, somewhere in the distance, could the dry crack of a broken branch be heard. This nighttime silence was filled with a special, solemn calm. The world seemed to stand still in anticipation of the dawn that would change everything forever. Every action the warrior took that evening was imbued with deep awareness. He did not waste time on idle worries, focusing instead on specific tasks. The perfect order of things reflected the same perfect order in his thoughts. The man was fully prepared to meet his fate, whatever it might be. This readiness made him truly free from all fears. Sitting at the entrance to the tipi, the man was lost in deep reflection on life. He felt no fear of the end, as he had been accustomed to the idea of its inevitability since childhood. In his culture, the end of one's earthly journey was perceived as a transition to another state. The spirits of his ancestors were already waiting for him in the other world, ready to welcome him into their ranks. This belief gave him incredible strength and absolute peace of mind. He mentally sang his own song, which he had composed many years ago. This song was not mournful. It sounded like a hymn to strength and dignity. It spoke of the beauty of the earth, the brilliance of the sun, and the courage of a warrior. The man did not utter a sound, but the words rang clearly in his head. The melody was simple, yet it held a tremendous, primal power. By repeating the song's words, he strengthened his spirit and banished his last doubts. He asked the higher powers for only one thing: to let him go with honor. To be brave in the face of danger was every man's primary duty. Retreat was considered a more terrible punishment than defeat. Therefore, he steeled himself for the utmost self-sacrifice the next day. He recalled the faces of old friends with whom he had shared joys and hardships. Many of them had already left this world, remaining in the tribe's memory as heroes. He felt an invisible connection with each of them on this dark night. It was as if they were standing behind him, passing on their experience and their courage. This invisible brotherhood made him many times stronger. The warrior did not ask for salvation or a miraculous deliverance from the coming trial. He understood that every person has their own role in the great pattern of life. If his role were to end tomorrow, he would accept it without complaint. Humility before fate did not mean weakness, it meant the highest degree of wisdom. A person has no power over time, but he has power over his attitude toward what is happening. The night wind picked up, bringing a light chill from the distant mountains. The man wrapped his cloak more tightly around himself, continuing to peer into the darkness. He felt the pulse of the earth, its slow and deep breathing. He was a son of this prairie, created from its dust and grasses. Returning to the bosom of nature did not frighten him, but seemed like a natural completion of the cycle. During these hours of solitude, the final purification of his consciousness took place. Everything superfluous, superficial, and vain burned away in the fire of this inner focus. Only the crystal clarity of purpose and the readiness to act remained. His mind became as sharp as the blade of his knife, ready to cut through any illusion. He had reached a state of perfect balance between body, spirit, and the surrounding world. The stars in the sky seemed unusually bright on this cloudless night. They twinkled like thousands of eyes of great ancestors watching over their descendant. The warrior recognized the constellations he had known since early childhood. They served as his guide through space and time, reminding him of the universe's eternity. Human life seemed but a fleeting flash against the backdrop of this cosmic grandeur. His inner dialogue gradually subsided, giving way to a ringing emptiness. Thoughts ceased to swarm in his head. His consciousness became even and calm. It was a void not of absence, but of absolute fullness and readiness. He had become a vessel filled with primal energy and power. Now it was impossible to catch him off guard or knock him off his intended path. The warrior's spiritual practice was as rigorous as his physical life. The ability to control one's mind was valued no less than the ability to shoot a bow. A true victor first conquered his own fears and weaknesses. Tomorrow would be merely the physical manifestation of what had already taken place within him. He was ready to greet the dawn with his visor raised and his head held high. Deep night had finally shrouded the camp in its dark veil. The man closed the tipi's flap, cutting off the cold air from the street. Inside, there was absolute darkness, but the warrior knew his way around his dwelling perfectly. He moved silently to his sleeping place, trying not to wake his sleeping wife. His steps were soft, like the tread of a creeping shadow. He took off his cloak and neatly folded it at the head of the bed. He kept his leggings and moccasins on, so he wouldn't waste time in case of an alarm. Readiness for a sudden awakening was a basic instinct for every prairie dweller. He lay on his back, stretching out his legs and relaxing every muscle in his body. The ground beneath the animal skins felt firm but secure. The warrior's breathing grew even deeper and more rhythmic. He concentrated on the movement of air in his lungs, slipping into a light trance. This helped release residual physical tension and calm his nervous system. His body grew heavy, as if filled with lead, pressing against the ground. The process of falling asleep was just as controlled as the process of staying awake. He did not allow disturbing visions to enter his consciousness before sleep. Any images of the coming day were ruthlessly cast aside by an effort of will. Sleep was meant to be a source of restoration, not a breeding ground for anxiety. The man commanded his mind to rest, and the mind obeyed this iron discipline. Inner peace spread through every cell of his well-trained body. The wind outside the teepee walls began to howl with a new, drawn-out force. This sound was familiar and caused no alarm in the camp. It merely underscored the grandeur and wildness of the vast expanse surrounding them. The warrior perceived it as a lullaby, sung by the very nature of the Great Plains. The sound of the elements lulled him to sleep better than any human song or story. The teepee swayed slightly in the gusts of wind, its wooden frame creaking. The dwelling reliably protected its inhabitants from any inclement weather. It was a simple yet perfect invention of a nomadic people. The man felt completely safe within these thin walls. This sense of security helped him finally relax and surrender to sleep. Only abstract shapes and calm colors floated through his mind. No concrete images capable of evoking an emotional response or excitement. It was a technique for quickly sinking into deep, restorative sleep. An experienced warrior could get as much rest in a few hours as others did in a night. The effectiveness of rest was critically important before a day of great physical exertion. His wife slept quietly beside him. Her presence warmed not only his body, but also his soul. They were two halves of a single whole, inextricably bound by their shared life. Her peaceful sleep was a testament to her complete trust in her husband and his abilities. The warrior absorbed this trust, making it part of his own confidence. Perfect order and harmony reigned in their little world. The darkness grew thick and palpable, enveloping his consciousness. The boundaries between reality and dreams began to blur gradually. The man allowed himself to slip into this unknown without resistance. He knew that his inner guardian would wake him at the slightest sign of danger. His instincts continued to function even when his mind shut down. The ability to control his sleep was yet another weapon in the warrior's arsenal. Without quality rest, even the strongest person became weak and vulnerable. The ability to disconnect from the outside world under any circumstances was a necessity. During these night hours, an invisible but very important accumulation of energy took place. Tomorrow, this energy would burst forth with incredible force. The final moments of wakefulness were devoted to fully accepting his fate. The warrior fell asleep with the clear realization that he might never wake up tomorrow. This thought did not cause panic. It was accepted as a statement of an inevitable fact. Life on the plains had taught him that the end was always close at hand. He had long since ceased to fear it, turning it into his silent companion. Humility before fate was the cornerstone of his people's philosophy. People did not try to argue with the spirits or change their predestined path. They accepted challenges with dignity, striving to show the utmost courage. To fall in battle meant leaving behind a glorious name and an example for future generations. It was a path of honor from which no one dared to stray. The warrior closed his eyes, and before his inner gaze stretched the boundless steppe. He saw the tall grass swaying in the gusts of the eternal wind. He smelled the dust and heard the murmur of a distant river. This was his world, for which he was ready to give everything without hesitation. The image of his native land was the last thing he saw before falling asleep. His body finally went limp, and his breathing became deep and slow. His heartbeat slowed, shifting into maximum energy-saving mode. The man sank into a state close to complete stillness, gathering his strength bit by bit. Every muscle rested, preparing for the incredible strain of the coming day. It was the perfect rest before the perfect storm. The camp slept, shrouded in darkness and protected by the traditions of its inhabitants. Hundreds of warriors were undergoing the same process of inner purification that night. Tomorrow, they would stand shoulder to shoulder, united by a common goal and a shared destiny. Their strength would lie not only in their weapons, but also in the unbreakable unity of their spirit. This unity made them a force capable of withstanding any adversity. The night had slowly passed its midpoint, drawing closer to dawn. The stars continued their silent dance across the vast black dome of the sky. Time relentlessly counted down the final hours of peace and quiet in this valley. Nature stood still, awaiting the first rays of the sun, which would bring with them new trials. But for now, all was calm, and the warrior's sleep remained undisturbed. He slept without dreams, in a deep, restorative slumber. His mind was as clear as the water in a mountain stream in early spring. No worries could disturb this sacred peace before the coming events. He had done everything a man should do to prepare himself. Now all that remained was to wait for the time to act. Tomorrow would demand all his skill, strength, and courage. He would fight not for territory, but for his people's right to exist. Every arrow he released would be filled with love for his family and his home. He would become an instrument in the hands of fate, blind and unyielding. But tonight, he was simply a tired man in need of rest. Sleep erased the boundaries between past, present, and future. In this state, there was no time, only absolute eternity. The warrior dissolved into this eternity, becoming part of the great cosmos. His spirit was calm, his body rested, his will was unyielding. He was ready for any outcome, accepting it with icy composure. The last thought that flashed through his mind before he finally sank into sleep was simple. He thought that life had been good, and he had lived it with dignity. If tomorrow was his time to go, he would do so with the same dignity with which he had lived. With that thought, the Lakota warrior fell into a deep sleep, not knowing if morning would bring him an awakening. It was the end of his last peaceful day. We've gone through the entire warrior training process with him, step by step. Which part of this psychological and physical training do you think is the most difficult for a modern person to understand? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new in-depth dives into the history of the Great Plains.